Hello everybody, today we are going to be talking about how we can divide fractions by fractions. So example 1 says how much of a 3/4 cup serving is in 2/3 cup of yogurt. So I'm actually going to draw a little diagram here to help me figure this out. So I need to have one whole, and I know I have 3/4 cups, so I'm going to cut this into fourths. And I'm going to go ahead and shade in my 3/4, so 1, 2, 3. So that is 3/4 cup serving. The other model I want to represent is my 2/3 cup. So I'm going to go ahead and draw another hole. This time I'm splitting it into thirds instead of fourths. And I have 2/3, so I'm going to shade in 2/3. So this represents my 2/3 cup of yogurt, and the bottom one represents my 3/4 cup serving. So to figure this out, I need to do 2/3 divided by 3/4. What this is saying is I'm dividing or cutting into or cutting up 2/3 cup of yogurt into 3/4 cup servings, and I need to figure out how much yogurt I'm going to have. Now, to divide with fractions, what you do is we keep the first fraction the same. So 2/3 stays the same. We want to change this division into a multiplication sign. We want to change this into a multiplication problem. And whenever we do that, we have to do the reciprocal of the second fraction. So this is a key term that we want to remember, reciprocal. I don't think I spelled that right. Sorry guys, this is why Miss Huber is a math teacher, not an ELA teacher. I'm going to call that good enough. I'm still not sure that's spelled correctly. Reciprocal. So reciprocal of 3/4. This just means that you flip the fraction. So you do 4/3. This is called a reciprocal. So now I can just multiply, because if we remember from last year, whenever we multiply fractions, we just multiply across. So you do 2 times 4 and then 3 times 3. So 2 times 4 is 8 and 3 times 3 is 9. So my answer here is 8/9, because I cannot simplify that fraction anymore. So to answer our question, how much of a 3/4 cup serving is in 2/3 cup of yogurt? 8/9. All right, let's try another one. Andrew has a 3/4 gallon of orange juice. He wants to pour it into a 1/6 gallon container. How many containers can Andrew fill? So again, we're going to be dividing here. And we always want, so what we're going to set this up first as 3/4 divided by 1/6. Because we're splitting it into 1/6 gallon containers. We already have 3/4 of a gallon of orange juice, and we need to pour that or split it into 1/6 gallon container. So that's why we're dividing by 1/6. So now to divide, again, 3/4, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to have my highlighter there. 3/4 stays the same. We want to change this division sign to multiplication, and we want to do the reciprocal. Definitely spelled that right this time. Good job, Ms. Huber. We'll do the reciprocal of the second fraction. So instead of 1/6, you're going to have 6/1. Now, you can go ahead and multiply these straight across. You can do 3 times 6 and 4 times 1. That's totally fine. Or I'm going to show you guys a different way. We are going to simplify before we multiply. So whenever we want to simplify before we multiply, what we do is, I like to call this the butterfly method. You look at the diagonals. So you would look at 4 and 6 and then 3 and 1. So let's start with 4 and 6. 4 and 6 can be simplified because they are both even numbers. Oops, I erased one too many things there. They are both even numbers, so they are both divisible by 2. So what I can do here is I can divide my 4 and my 6 by 2. And instead of having a 4, and I'm going to cross this out, and 4 divided by 2 is actually 2. So I'm going to have 2. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this out just so it's not as messy. What I'm left with is 3 over 2 times 3 over 1. The second part would to look at the other diagonal, the other butterfly wing would be to look at 3 and 1. Now there's nothing we can simplify those by, so those will stay the same. So now I can go ahead and multiply. So 3 times 3 is 9, and 2 times 1 is 2. Now, this right here is called an improper fraction. And whenever we have an improper fraction, we want to turn it back into a mixed number. So if you guys don't remember how to do that, what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, how many times can 2 go into 9? And it can go in 4 times because 4 times 2 is actually 8. The denominator always stays the same, so my denominator remains as 2. And then we have to ask ourselves, how many is left over to get us back to 9? So we already said 4 times 2 is 8. So how much is left over? There is 1 left over. So my answer here would be 4.5. So my answer here is how many containers can Andrew fill? If I have 3/4 gallon of orange juice, I can fill 4.5 containers. Now I do want to show you guys the other way we could have done this. If you didn't want to simplify first, if you had 3/4 times 6 over 1, and let's say you just wanted to multiply straight across, which you can do. 6 times 3, you get 18, and 4 times 1 is 4. Now, we can simplify here. So what I can do is these are both even numbers, so I can divide both of these by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. And now, as you guys can see, I have exactly the same answer as when I simplified before I multiplied. So you can always do this 2 ways. You can simplify first. Oops, that was a bad one. You can simplify first by looking diagonally with our butterfly wings to see if there's anything we can simplify, or you can simplify after you multiply. Either way. Let's try one more. Kate has a 2/3 gallon of popcorn. So we have 2/3 of a gallon of popcorn, and she wants to put them into 1 6-gallon bags. How many bags can she fill? So we already have 2/3 gallon, and we want to put it into or split it into 1 6-gallon bag. So we're going to divide by 1/6. Now, to set this up, remember, we want to keep the first fraction the same. 2/3 stays the same. We want to change our division to multiplication, and we want to do the reciprocal of the second fraction. So instead of 1/6, the reciprocal would be, good job, 6/1. Now, again, there's 2 ways that we can do this. Let's start by simplifying before we multiply. So just as a reminder, to simplify before you multiply, you want to look at the diagonals. So let's start by looking at my first butterfly wing, 2 and 1. Now there is nothing we can simplify 2 and 1 by, so we're going to leave those alone. But let's look at our second butterfly wing, our other diagonals, 3 and 6. We can definitely simplify 3 and 6. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide both of these by 3. When I divide 3 by 3, I'm left with 1. And when I divide 6 by 3, I'm left with 2. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this out just so it's a little bit less messy. So instead of 2/3, I'm now going to have 2/1. And instead of 6/1, I'm now going to have 2/1. And now I can just multiply straight across. So I have 2 times 2, which is 4, and 1 times 1, which is 1. So my answer here would be 4. because that is saying I have 4 holes. So the answer to my question is I can fill 4 bags of popcorn. Now, the second way that we can do this is if we want to simplify after we multiply. So let's say we have 2/3 again times 6/1, and we're going to simplify this time after we multiply. So we're just going to multiply straight across. 6 times 2 is 12, and 3 times 1 is 3. I can simplify this fraction by dividing, and I can divide both of these numbers by 3. They're both divisible by 3. So 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. So again, I have the same answer, 4 bags of popcorn. So whenever you guys are multiplying our fractions here, the very important thing to remember is to keep the first fraction the same. I'm actually going to write these steps out for you guys. So whenever we divide a fraction by a fraction, you want to keep the first fraction the same, you want to change division to multiplication. Running out of room here. Multiplication. I'm just actually going to erase that and write it down below so it's nice and clean for you guys. So we're going to change division to multiplication. And then we are going to do the reciprocal of the second fraction. And just as a reminder, reciprocal means to just flip the fraction. So if we were really to have 1/2, the reciprocal of that would be 2/2.